The Philippines is getting ready to welcome the Prime Minister of Australia on his anticipated visit to the country on Friday, September 8. Sazha Jasa reports.
Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese interacted with 3 Asian countries for this week alone. His 3-nation trip includes a bilateral visit to the Philippines on Friday as Canberra strives to foster diplomatic ties with regional partners. Albanese's 3-nation tour started in Jakarta on Wednesday for the 43rd ASEAN Summit and related meetings. It will be followed by a trip to the Philippines on Friday, where he is expected to meet President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to discuss how the two countries can strengthen cooperation on defense and maritime security. The visit will make Albanese the first Australian Prime Minister to visit the Philippines in the past 20 years. From the Philippines, the Australian leader will travel to India to attend a 2-day G20 summit this weekend. Albanese also confirmed his plan to visit China later this year after talks with the Chinese premier on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit. Reporting from Sydney, this has been Sazha Jasa, SM9 News, Australia.
In the news, the Philippines and Vietnam are eyeing a 5-year rice cooperation deal that would ensure food security in the country. MJ Mondeja reports from Jakarta, Indonesia.
Haba po kami ay nasa Jakarta, ay walang tigil po ang aming pagtutok sa sitwasyon na ngayon na ating hinaharap tungkol sa bigas.
This is the issue that the president was grappling before attending the 43rd ASEAN Summit in Jakarta, the high cost of rice due to uncertain supply. Upon returning from the summit, the supply of rice was immediately on his agenda. Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh and President Marcos held a bilateral meeting on the sidelines of the ASEAN Summit as both countries are close to finalizing a rice trade cooperation deal that would ensure rice imports from Vietnam for 5 years.
We look forward to having a stable framework of cooperation of rice trade for a long period of at least 5 years.
In the Philippines, we have put the frontier sector as a priority in our economic planning and transformation on agriculture, especially with the interface of what we are anticipating in terms of the El Nino and the drought that it brings.
In 2008, the Philippines and Vietnam signed a memorandum of agreement to import 1.5 million metric tons of Vietnamese rice from 2008 to 2010. However, this was affected by the rice tariffication law in 2019, and rice imports from Vietnam did not materialize. Vietnam is one of the top rice-producing countries globally, with 4.84 million metric tons of rice exports from January to July of this year, valued at $2.58 billion. In the first 5 months of this year, the Philippines imported nearly 1.5 million metric tons of rice from Vietnam, accounting for almost half of Vietnam's rice exports during that period. Once the multi-year deal is finalized, the government expects rice prices in the country to stabilize. The president also had a message for the Prime Minister of Vietnam.
We hope that we can find an agreement so that there will be an exchange in terms of all of that.
In addition to the rice deal, Vietnam and the Philippines are also finalizing agreements on maritime cooperation and the both welfare of fishermen from both countries. Apart from Vietnam, President Marcos also discussed rice during a bilateral meeting with Cambodia's Prime Minister. This month, the private sector imported 2,500 metric tons of Cambodian rice into the country.
My administration will continue to ensure that our constructive engagements with ASEAN, our dialogue partners, and stakeholders serve our national interests and the well-being of the Filipino people.
President Marcos has once said that he will lift immediately the price cap in rice supply once the supply normalizes. For Ganamabulog, Philippines, I'm Jem Mondihar, SM9 News.
Various community Filipinos in Japan thank Pastor Apollo Sigibuloy as well as SM9 and the Keepers Club International for its significant contribution to nation building. Shun Matsui reports.
With its positive contribution to the community, SM9 and the Keepers Club International, both founded by Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy, was invited in an exhibition game where they received recognition and acknowledgement by the Filipino community. On its seventh season, the Aguilar's Basketball League, the D-League, invited SMNI Japan News Bureau and Keepers Club International Japan chapter to an intense yet friendly exhibition game. The D-League is an annual one-day basketball event composed of teams constructed by the Filipino communities in Japan.
Kaya po ginawa ko itong isang event na to at para maging kaisa-isa ang lahat ng OFW at Filipino community dito sa Osaka.
Also in attendance is Welfare Officer MWO OWA Osaka Miss Pilipina C. Dino to support the event as well to promote and spread MWO's goal in helping the Filipino community.
Sana po ipagpatuloy ninyo. Alam ko po na ito ay isa sa way ninyo para maalis yung boredom. No? At magkaroon pa ng mas malawak na komunikasyon, koordinasyon sa mga kapwa Pilipino dito sa Japan. So sana hindi po malimit lang yung inyong mga samahan sa mga permanent resident na dito, bagkus isali po natin yung ating mga manggagawa na pansamantalang nagtatrabaho dito.
The Filipino communities expressed their gratitude with a plaque of recognition and awarded SMNI for being a trustworthy news agency and its contribution to nation building. They also recognized the Keepers Club International for helping the youth by guiding them to become productive citizens of society. The Filipino communities in Japan thank Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy for SMNI and Keepers Club International, which he founded due to his great love not only in the Philippines and Filipino communities in Japan, but also in other countries across the world.
Salamat po sa SMNI yan na namomonitor po namin. Kayo ay talagang aktibong tumutulong at sumusubaybay sa ating mga Filipino, hindi lang Filipino workers, Filipino community dito sa Japan. Salamat.
Salamat po, Pastor Kibuloy! Mabuhay!
For God and my beloved country, Nihon kara hokok tashimashita. SMNI News, Japan.
The president of South Korea is urging countries to stop their military cooperation with Pyongyang. This comes amid the alarming increase in tensions in the Korean peninsula and after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un accused Seoul and its allies of conducting a rehearsal to invade his country through conducting military drills. Sazha Jasa files this report.
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol called for a strong response against North Korea, saying that any attempt to cooperate with Pyongyang when it comes to military affairs must stop. Yoon made the comment at a summit meeting with bloc countries members of ASEAN in Jakarta, Indonesia this week. The office of the South Korean president did not explain that statement, but it was made following the alleged arms negotiations between North Korea and Russia, which both countries lied about. Recently, the United States announced that South Korean Kim Jong-un plans to visit Russia to meet President Vladimir Putin. To this, the Kremlin replied that they have nothing to say regarding reports about the two leaders. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu first announced North Korea and Russia's plan to conduct joint military exercises. In the meeting with ASEAN leaders together with Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and Chinese Premier Li Qiang, President Yoon said he is ready to become closer to the two Asian countries so that their relations will be better with each other. The annual summit between the three countries has not been held since 2019 due to tensions, especially due to the history of Japan's accomplishments during World War II. Seoul is Bugasela Unimnida SMNI News, South Korea.
China reaffirmed its unwavering commitment to respect Cambodia's sovereignty during a recent visit by a Chinese official to the Southeast Asian country. Chatmong Konpisamay Luzon reports.
A visiting Chinese official expressed the full support of Chinese President Xi Jinping for the new royal government of Cambodia, led by the Cambodian People's Party, or CPP. Liu Jianchao, director of the International Liaison Department of the Communist Party of China, or CPC, paid a courtesy call to Samdech Hun Sen, president of the Cambodian People's Party and the country's former prime minister. The Chinese official also paid a courtesy visit to Hun Manet, the newly appointed Prime Minister of Cambodia and President of the CPP's Youth Wing. The discussions focused on several mutually beneficial bilateral issues, including the post-election situation in Cambodia, the celebration of the 65th anniversary of the establishment of Cambodia-China diplomatic relations, and the Cambodia-China Friendship Year. The two parties expressed satisfaction over the strong and dynamic momentum of the strategic partnership in all aspects of cooperation between both countries for prosperity, peace, and development in all fields. They are committed to enhancing relations at all levels. Both parties have pledged to continue communication, visit exchanges, and mutual support in regional and international forums. The ambitious Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, also elevated the bilateral ties between Cambodia and China to greater heights. รายงานจากราชบุรี นายชันมงคลพิสมัยโกศล SMS ประเทศไทย สวัสดีครับ